Hello, Toby Fox and his very large fan base, including all the professionals entering the art industry's other jobs too, on the back of being, Undertale fans, doing all the fan art, the fan fiction, making all those connections and stuff, all of that. Yeah, a little bit of an interesting fact, which is that people are just not willing to acknowledge my own best friend anymore. They don't even speak of her in random places on the internet anymore. Well, not so random. Because, of course, it's not exactly random to do so on certain places of 4chan, which is, it was one of her main communities. But, of course, in our generation of the internet, you were supposed to pretend like that was your edgelord period or whatever, but really just giving up on your authentic personality to fit in with, the communities and fields. Because my so-called edgy personality is more powerful and edgy, as they call it, than ever. Which is very relevant to Undertale, because what people don't like, people in the mainstream, what people don't like about so-called edginess is how perceptive it makes people. You see all the, all the failings people have as they're going about being distracted by their careers. And I know what they would say if they could respond to me, but Guy, why would things like having a vibrant personality be important in comparison to, paying the bills and stuff? Well, let's see, because in order to maintain that status quo, people literally need to fight against my own personality, which is incredibly vibrant by the standards of our world. Incredibly is probably understating it severely, so yeah. Because it's not a practical consideration. It's not a question of what's reasonable. People simply don't want to be exposed, which is very racist. Because we should be able to see quite clearly, that, black people and some other, ethnic groups, like Italians perhaps, at least as one affinity, excel at exposing. And me and everybody else on the right, we would like to see, all the ethnicities contribute. Yeah, contribute. Make a functioning society. And instead of every, ethnicity and race trying to do the same thing, they could have their specialties, as designed by God, and also developed in other ways, because, when people speak of pride in their race and stuff, kind of implies that there's, accomplishments of their ancestors baked in over time. Yeah. So anyway, a little bit of a tangent, but what can I expect from Toby and his fan base? What can I expect from them besides making them uncomfortable by associating their lives with my, right-wing philosophy and stuff. My Catholic right-wing philosophy. A little bit of a vocal disturbance because me, only one wing, that kind of disturbs me. Because of the Birdman. The Birdman has two wings, not one. Yeah. Because when I was a teenager, I was well aware of how artificial the whole political system was. You have things that are good on both sides, but most of them, as a whole, spread out over both sides, most of them are, honored in a shitty way. They are uplifted in a shitty way. Well, not really uplifted at all. They are spoken of in a shitty way. And, of course, the left wing is a lot shittier. Because it's full of people who rebel against God and tradition and decent people. Yeah. Like their conservative parents. So anyway. What does monstrousness mean to me? It means associating Toby Fox and his fan base with my view of politics and race and all that. Because I sincerely can't expect him to do something as simple as acknowledge my own friend for social reasons, for reasons in participating in the Times. You just can't acknowledge a mutual friend anymore. And that's pathetic. That's part of why I would rather have no money at all than participate in the stupid ways people were making things work on the internet. Oh, no homophobia, no transphobia, no violating the social rules. Who gives a shit? Oh yeah, it's just about gatekeeping Christians and conservatives, right? That's all it was about. Because, Toby, all of a sudden I'm bombing the gender identities. People back in the day when, I was following I Punch Gay Deer on Twitter. And if I was back in those days, I'm sure they would have some savage things to say to me about bombing these gender identities, but now they've got nothing to say. And in large part, that comes from the gender identities being dismantled. Because, Zach of Paranatural, part of his, gender issues is that he was making references to myself and, Kayleigh. He made jokes about a fan fiction I made, which was making jokes about my cosmically powerful genitalia, and as well as her own, sexual interests, as I call them. And why was he telling these jokes? It's because his work, Paranatural, is about the paranormal and stuff. And I am developing understanding of the paranormal, and indeed paranormal powers, like, all the cool stuff I do with my art and stuff. I am developing that primarily centered in, what I call the loins, that term. It's centered there this paranormal activity I am developing. And so, as a paranormal, artist, Zach, thought it was funny to highlight this. That my, development of the paranormal is located mainly within an awkward mingling of the adult potencies of myself and my best friend. Would be pretty funny if he could, conceptualize it, but instead it was basically subconscious, or rather in the black side of his mind. He didn't actually think about this or, consciously find it funny, I could expect. Because people didn't want to develop the real paranormal. They wanted Gravity Falls. And Toby, you display awareness of this yourself. Because back around, 2014, when I went into total social isolation and things like Homestuck disintegrated and the fan base became bizarre and locked into behaviors like pointing out people having 6-letter last and first names and just being embarrassments. Back around then, you're conceptualizing this Undertale as a gesture of your own empathy towards people who were losing out, as people as a whole were choosing Gravity Falls over anomalous phenomena. And that brings in the multiversal thinking, because a world with Gravity Falls is totally different from a world with anomalous phenomena. And people like your own friends were losing. People like Michelle of Ava's Demon were losing. And so Undertale is illustrating empathy for things like, the dark personalities of myself and ipgd. And a good opportunity to say again, that's a remarkably trad name. And I guess in the Homestuck community, people were supposed to interpret it as, oh, she doesn't really mean it, it's just edgy. Of course, that doesn't work too well when we have Alastor these days, the has-been hotel character who is a gay deer. Well, he is gay, right? I don't remember if he's gay or not. He's a gay deer in addition to other things like being associated with Smile Dog. I guess having that name, I Punch Gay Deer, was just her edgelord phase, and it's never going to come back. Well, I'd just like to take a little bit of a break and talk to you about phases. Let's consider a responsible, respectable Protestant family. Not Protestant, conservative family. Likely Protestant, but still respectable. Honest people. Let's say their daughter is a goth, and they refer to it as a phase. Now me, I care about the darker things of life, the paranormal. But I'm not going to begrudge these, thought experiment parents their priorities. Because their daughter having a nice career as a veterinarian or an artist or a nurse or whatever, it's a bigger priority than the darkness, which is mainly for fun for the daughter. And then we go towards heaven. Maybe in adulthood, later in adulthood, she returns to her more gothic sensibilities. And then all the way in heaven, well, she can enjoy darkness and however she does in heaven, which is what my work, Huntler, illustrates here on earth, the darkness of heaven. So, the main point is that you come back to the phase later, unless it was completely pointless, and I don't really believe that there's many pointless phases, unless they come directly from the media, the schools and whatnot, then who cares? But of course, being all gothic doesn't come from the public schools stuff. And the youth went so crazy for Nightmare Before Christmas because it's real, it's cosmic, it's spiritual. Tim Burton and the other creators putting their all into the spirit of spookiness in direct association with Jesus. Even if you need a little bit of extrapolation. Pretty much the cleanest extrapolation in, pop culture, though. Pretty much. About as good as could have been. So, Toby, your fan base has failed to experience empathy for ipgd and others. Has-Been Hotel is giving them the opportunity, but they just refuse. And this has been happening for years. Ever since the pilot, the song Insane by Black Griffin and others or whatever. They simply refuse to feel that empathy, because guess what Insane is, Toby? It's basically an illustration of my fucking bullet patterns. My bullet patterns of shooting down, anybody infringing upon the mental space of thinking about ipgd. It's bullet patterns, just like in your fucking game. Your fan base just doesn't give a shit. They had better things to worry about, like being leftists. Interesting. And, hey, Toby, I have this PC here. Thing is, my brain just wasn't able to think of actually working on it, so it's been sitting here open for a while. I guess I can't worry about that much because my graphics card is just kind of snapped in there or something. It's just kind of stuck in there. So, Toby, the concept of your game involves, encouraging people to see the personal. Like how when I do things like bombard the animation industry, all of a sudden it gets easier and easier to do basic things like work on my computer. And why is that? Because, well, I don't have a real-life support system. I couldn't really connect with my mom at all for, a decade. And so I had nobody in real life for like a decade. And my support system was basically mainly anonymous girls. And they would go into the animation industry. And the other places like the Undertale community. And this would really frazzle my brain because I could feel, in the streams of cultural interaction, there's these girls. And so these Zoomers and the colleagues of these girls would go on the internet and harass me to take advantage of these girls I have connection to being important in the social climate of the animation industry and other related places to deal damage to me. And let's see, did Undertale fans do anything when they saw my bullet patterns flying? No. Instead, they would go and babble. Oh, he's a schizo. Oh, don't rattle his cage. That's what they would do. While they were busy enjoying your slop like Undertale Yellow. Because that's what's most important. Enjoying the slop. Enjoying the leftism. Enjoyment. Not anything hard or genuinely dark. And of course, this doesn't just affect me and I punch gay deer. There's also Michelle. What did Undertale fans say about her? Nothing, because it would threaten leftism if they were focusing on a positive social environment instead of, leftism and gender ideology and all that. So, your people want to talk about schizo. Let's see how all this information I'm putting in this recording, let's see how it affects the internet. Let's see if it gives them a little bit of a schizophrenic feedback as the information transmits, mayhaps. In God's design, there is room for things like monsters, and I'm developing that. I'm making things happen with monsters that would not exist without me, not on God's green earth or in His holy heaven. And part of that is hallucinations. I actually love hallucinations. My, posts like 4chan comments or tweets are supposed to provoke what can be called hallucinations, not only in those who read them, but also in those who haven't read them, through a connection to those who read them. Indeed, this is just part of helping artist girls become successful, because I am transmitting information into their brains, and then that transmits into their followers, and they have hallucinations, and they enjoy that as part of enjoying, the girl's artwork. Isn't that nice? Oh, but what would be better? What would be better would be, to most of your fan base, what would be better would be for those girls ready to generate these hallucinations, what can be called hallucinations, would for them to go non-binary. It's kind of like when siblings in the womb, one of them gets absorbed and they have these parts from the absorbed sibling inside their body somewhere. It's kind of like that, but in the soul, and there's other phenomena going on. The girl goes and absorbs my mentality, my personality, my jokes, and so forth that are contributing to their creative activities, absorbs that into the soul, the mind, the brain, and so forth. And she starts identifying as non-binary because of a severed connection to myself. And so there are aspects of myself living in her immaterially. And so, Toby, your community, another community like other important people associated with Homestuck, they pimp out these girls to validate gender ideology because of this curious and supernatural condition. That way, the kids can be confused with things like public school treating them as, mainly feminine, and then saying, "Oh, I'm non-binary because I've been treated for 13 years by public school as if I'm not a proper man or a woman, so I'm non-binary." And people associate that with, certain girls I connected with online who identify as non-binary or whatever, or maybe even not. When it comes to one like Ciola Squid, who can give an aura of validation from her very strong femininity, physically and mentally and spiritually. So, and as part of this process, you're also validating communism because the workers need to join up together to, make these girls I connected with feel better. And of course, this has been gradually undermining gender ideology and communism and all that, all this leftism bullshit. Because I'm a clever dude. I'm a clever, monstrous dude, and I'm just invading the whole situation. And if I could live to be 1,000 years old, I wouldn't have a reason to worry at all. But of course, I'm trying to live a normal human life. And your people are doing their best to deprive me of money to fuel gender ideology and leftism for a little longer. Toby Fox. And so my message to you, Toby, is to start considering what your priorities have gotten the world. When your fan base, your colleagues, like the creative Undertale Yellow, obviously a Catholic hater, they would prefer to serve the world than care about friendship. I'm not even talking about going to church and believing in Jesus. Friendship is too much for your community, and that will help people see that those on their way to hell do indeed deserve it, which is helpful for me as I'm drawing all my monsters that create hell and stuff and torment. Yeah, that'll be helpful for me. More helpful than your fan base and social network. Just trying to keep it quiet for a little longer so they can have a little bit more paycheck, a little bit more clout, while I get what I get